Hey folks, welcome to this video. In this video, we're going to dive into looking at MediaPipe in TouchDesigner, how to plug that into StreamDiffusion, and ultimately getting that into a really cool new platform, Daydream, that is created by the sponsor of today's video, Livepeer. Livepeer is a cool company doing a lot of video infrastructure kind of work in the web. And one of the things you're going to see today with Daydream is both how it's a really fun environment to explore StreamDiffusion, especially in this world of so many Gen AI tools, so many user interfaces, and how many of them feel corporate. It can be really hard to have fun and feel like you're performing with a lot of these models, which is why the Daydream web app is really cool. It's kind of a fresh feeling approach and a more performative approach to working with StreamDiffusion in kind of the cloud, as well as the ability, which is now rolling out, for Daydream to actually host StreamDiffusion instances for you, so that even if you don't have a powerful GPU, even if you're kind of working on some kind of installation where you need all the resources for what's going on in TouchDesigner, but you're still trying to get StreamDiffusion up and running, you can pixel stream your data up and down from the cloud, which is like a really cool feature to explore. So with that said, let's get into the video. And as always, our partners and sponsors don't really get any editorial say over what we do. So this is all coming to you right from the fun we're having inside of TouchDesigner. Enjoy.
Hey guys, it's Andrew here with Immersive HQ, also known as as.ws on Instagram. And today we're going to be making this thing. If you don't know, if you haven't seen this before, this is a MediaPipe and StreamDiffusion workflow where we take our body's skeleton data and we rebuild a point cloud texture to use as instancing data, like so. And then afterwards, we can place a bunch of stickers on our body and we can funnel that into StreamDiffusion. It's pretty straightforward and it's really fun. And I think that there's a lot of things that you can stick onto your skeleton. And yeah, I'm just really excited to get this out so that I can see what other people will make with it. Something that's pretty straightforward about this patch is that we're just organizing some data through interpolation. And once we have that, what we can do is, well, we have this skeleton of ourselves and we can directly change how many points we want, like so. Okay, let's get started, shall we? So a few prerequisites to first have is definitely a video of yourself full body. This isn't entirely necessary, but it allows you to work with MediaPipe without getting up and down. The second thing that you will need is MediaPipe. You can get MediaPipe as a plugin through Torrent's Patreon, I believe. I think if you scroll down far enough, you'll be able to find this GitHub repository where you can download it. You'll have a few tutorials on his Patreon on how to install it, but lots of free resources on how to use it and how to get it working effectively in any TouchDesigner network. And then lastly, what you will need is NDI tools. And NDI tools will help you connect your movie file into MediaPipe, because MediaPipe only takes in webcam inputs. So if you use NDI tools, you can get your computer to pick up any movie file as a webcam input. So once you have a video of yourself, what we want to do is we want to be able to loop it at a correct portion that we find ideal. This is like a 2-minute video and I only use 30 seconds of it. And so the way that we do that is we can get a constant, and I'm going to just name this play, and I'm going to set this to be 1. And then I'm going to grab a speed. And then in my speed, I'm going to do a loop. And then in my loop, I want to choose the correct portion in seconds. So I believe mine is 13 to 44. And then I'm going to drag this minimum to be onto my reset value as well. After that, I'm going to grab a null, just like so. And then underneath, I'm also going to put in a keyboard in. And this keyboard in, we can just put onto the pulse. And once we have that, we can go into our video and we're going to change this to be specify index. And then in our specify index, right now it's in frames. We want this to be in seconds. then what we can do is we can drag this index onto our, or we can drag our play onto our index. And now we have the correct portion that we want for our video. And we can reset it whenever we want just by pressing 1. Now we have this up and running. The next thing that we want to do is we want to pipe this video into NDI. And the way that we can do that is, well, first I'm going to put down a transform. And I'm just going to use this for cropping. You should too, because you might want your video to be a bit closer for MediaPipe, but this will depend on you. And then after the transform, we're going to put in an NDI out like so. And then with this NDI, what you want to do is you can just name your source to be whatever you want. So I'm going to do video input like so. And then once we have that, we can go into NDI. And what we want to do is we want to click on the webcam option. What should happen is a little menu should pop out in the bottom right. But if not, you can go down into this menu here with all of your tiny icons. And then there should be one called NDI webcam. And you can click on it and you'll get this menu right here. And once you have that, you can just choose NDI, go into your name or your computer name, I guess, and then choose video input like so. And so now one of your webcam options will be your movie file in. Now that we have our movie file in loaded into our webcam, we're going to start our MediaPipe workflow. First, I'm going to grab MediaPipe. Mine's in my palette. Yours might be in a folder, but you just want to drag the MediaPipe talks into your network. From there, it's going to say check enable external talks. If you don't know how to do that, definitely watch one of Torrent's introduction videos. It'll just be in the comment tab, and you just need to replace your text here with the talks path. And then turn this on and press reload. This will save a lot on loading time, saving time, and file size. After you give it a bit, you should be able to see your video in MediaPipe with all of the pose and tracking data. Depending on which NDI webcam video you loaded it in, you'll have to choose from here, but it should be in the first one if you follow the same thing as I did. From there, we can turn off detect faces. We can also turn off detect facial landmarks. We can also turn off detect hands, objects, images, and then you can decide whether or not to show overlays or not. From there, since we only have detect poses on, we can grab the pose tracking component as well. When you drag it, it should automatically connect. If not, it's the third output of your MediaPipe. Once you're there, you'll see all of the instancing data. And what we're going to do, though, is we're not going to use the instancing data. We're going to just grab the normalized data. From there, I'm going to name this select to be left. And I'm going to select all of the important left components of my joint data. So, left, X, Y. So, and I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to get another one. And this one's going to be right. And instead of it being left here, I'm going to do right. So, and now, when you zoom in, you'll see that we have all of our data for our left side of our body and then the right side of our body as well. I'll close this as well. And then one last select that we're going to name head. And this one we're going to type in star nose star bracket X, Y, close bracket, and then another star. And that will give us the XY data of our nose. What we're going to do now is we're going to set up the interpolation. And so the way that we can do this is, well, first I'm going to grab a constant and I'm just going to call this interpolate. And I'm going to set that to be like 10. And that's going to be a null, like so. From there, well, let's think about this. If we zoom in onto our left data, what we have is just a bunch of like landmarks, which are just our joint positions. So we have like our wrist, we have our thumb, we have our elbow. And so if you think about it in terms of like maybe our wrist data and our elbow data, what we're trying to do is we're trying to rebuild our skeleton. And so what we want to do is if we have just these two, we can figure out a way with some clever math to just add points in between. So like do, right? And that turns out to be actually a very simple process using the stretch chop. And so first what we want to do is we want to select the correct data in the correct order. So you want to think about this in terms of someone standing up with their arms to the side. We want the lowest, we want to select our lowest joint and then our highest joint. And so what we're going to do is we're going to select our thumbs first because that's the lowest. Then we want to select our wrist, and then we want to select our elbow, and then we want to select our shoulder. And then these are all the points that we need to rebuild our left arm. And so what we want to do is from here, we want to shuffle. And so what the shuffle does is it's essentially the same thing as a transpose in our DAT, but like a bit more specific because you can choose how much you can transpose. And what I mean by that is, well, if I just bring this, and you don't need to copy me for this part, I just wanted to explain quickly. If you bring this into a DAT, you'll see that we have a list of, or like a horizontal list of data. And if we do a transpose, we flip it. The thing is though, is that if you think about this as like a coordinate table, like an X and a Y, right? We right now only have, when we just transpose it regularly, all we have is our X right now because, well, there's no second column. And so the shuffle kind of allows us to do the same thing. But if we do sequence by every nth channel, I believe, like so, and then make that 2, yeah, we'll get the exact same thing as our transpose. But if I change this to a DAT, like so, now what we have is we have our X and our Y instead of just our X. That's great. Once we have that, what we can do is we can grab a stretch. And with our stretch, what we're going to do is we're going to put the unit value to be absolute. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put our interpolate to be at our end. And we're going to do -1, like so. And then from there, we can just grab a null. And I'm going to call this our left arm, like so. And then from there, I'm going to bring this to a chop to top. And from here, I just want to do R and G. And then I'm going to go into my comment tab and I'm going to make the pixel, I'm going to make the input smoothness to be nearest pixel. And then from there, I want to grab a layout. And with this layout, what I want is I want to be aligned top to bottom. And I want this to be a scaled resolution, like so. And so now what you can do is you can go into our layout and you can view it as points. And look at that. It's our left arm. Wow. Isn't that great? Okay. So what's really nice about this is, well, now we can do the same thing with everything else. So right here is our left arm. Well, what we can do is we can grab another one, or I guess we can grab another one just like so. And so for this one, we're going to change this to be our left leg. And this left leg, well, we'll have to replace all of this, but it's going to be the same thing. We're going to have to grab our foot. So our foot, X, Y, and then we want to grab our ankle. Then we want to grab our knee. And then we want to grab our hip. The foot, for some reason, the Z index gets selected even when you like filter it using the XY. So we have to do it again. But there we go. And then from there, we can grab another chop too. Bring it here, like so. And then with that, I'm going to bring that in. And look at that. It's our leg. Very awesome. And then, yeah, we can repeat it again with our our right arm. So this time we can just copy this entire thing, drag it down, then we replace it here. Oh, nope. I want to replace it here, like so. And I'm going to call this right arm. So. And then from there, we just want to grab another chop, bring that into here, like so. And look at that! Like we're building a person. Oh my god, this is so exciting. Then we do it one more time. Oh, no. Then we want to do it one more time with this one. Like so. And again, we want to, instead of it being left, we want it to be this one. Oh, make sure to replace it correctly though. So, there we go. And then from there, this one, we can grab, change this to be right leg, like so. And then grab another chop. Put that there. And there we go. Awesome. So those are our leg and arm, legs and arms interpolated very nicely. Now we just have to do a bit more math to get the hip, like the shoulders, and then also the hip, and then also the body. But it's pretty simple. So yeah, let's do that. Okay, so now that we have our arms and our legs, next we want to do is our shoulder. And so what we want to do is, well, these are separated by left and right. Well, what we can actually do is we can actually grab both of them. So just do this, like so. And then all we have to do is grab shoulder, like so. And now, instead of do the same thing. So we can just copy all of this, like so. And then from there, we just call this shoulder. And from there, just put that into there. Oh no, sorry. I have to grab a chop. And then put that in, like so. And then we can do the same thing. Copy this one. And instead, right, we want the hip. So the hip, we can just call hip, like so. And grab the same thing. So. Like this one, bam, bam, like that. And then the last part is our body. And our body, you have to think about it with the idea of, okay, we want the midpoint of our shoulder, so bump, bump, and then the midpoint of our hip, bump, bump. And so the way that we can do that actually is pretty easy. All we have to do, it's a bit different from the other ones, but still the same idea. We're gonna grab our shuffle right here, because this has our, like both of them. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab an analyze. And what an analyze can do is it can give us the average. And then with the average, that gives us the midpoint of our shoulder. And then we can do the same thing, but this time with our hip shuffle, like so. And now, from there, well, we have our midpoint and our other midpoint, and then we can actually just merge these two together, like so. And then do the exact same thing with the shuffle and the stretch. Oh, oops. Sure not to select all of them. And then this is our body. Like so. And I'm gonna just drag this a bit back, like so. And then we're gonna grab one more chop. And I'm gonna bring that into here, like so. And there we have it, guys. Our body. How exciting. From there, I'm gonna grab a null. And we're gonna call this our skeleton. POS. So one thing you'll notice about our skeleton is that there is no head. And we can change that by using our nose data. And so with our nose data, we could just bring it down all the way here. And we just want to stretch it to the same length as all of our other data, like so. And then I'm gonna call this head. And then we can grab another chop too. And then before we connect it into our layout though, I want to be able to move it around. So what we can do is we can add a point transform. And in this point transform, I want to be able to move it up and down and also forward and backwards. And so we want to change our output to be, well, right now it's RG. So we want it to be RGBA so that we can move in the Z direction, forward and back. And we want to connect that into our layout. Now, since our layout is also RG, we also want to go into our common tab of our layout and go into 32-bit float RGBA here as well. And so now I'll show you what I mean by being able to move it forward and backwards. So if we zoom in into our skeleton and I move my angle just like this, well, now with our point transform, I can move my pixel, or I can move my guy like left to right. I can also move it up and down, but most importantly, I can move this forward a bit. And this is important because that means that our head instance will always be in front of our body parts. Okay, so now that we have our skeleton positional data, we can also make the color and the scale. And the way that we can do that is simply with just a noise. This noise, we just want the output to be noise. And since this is our scale, we just want it to be black and white. You can play around with this, but I'm going to change up the seed, increase the period, change the amplitude to be like, I don't know, like 6, 7. You're going to change the offset to be like 1. And then I'm just going to copy this, or before I do that, I'm going to put another null. And this null, I'm going to just call my skeleton scale. And then I'm going to copy both of them, paste them down here. I'm going to change this one to be skeleton color. And for this noise, I'm just going to turn this monochrome off. And I'm going to decrease the amplitude. Sorry, I'm going to decrease the offset and also decrease the amplitude a bit. Like that. After that, I'm going to select all of this. The layout, colors, and position, all of these things. Go into the common tab of noise 2, do nearest pixels and nearest pixels, just like so. Great. So now we have our 3 instancing data that we're going to use. And let's just quickly set up our instancing network. So we're just going to need a circle, and then we're going to do a transform. And then with this, I'm going to do 0.05. And from there, I'm going to grab a geometry, like so. And in my, actually no, I'm going to first grab a camera. And then I'm also going to go into my materials and grab a constant material. And I'll put the material here. From there, I'm going to also grab a render top, just like so. And I'm going to change the ratio to be 1080 by 1920, which is the same as my input video. From there, I'm going to go into my instancing tab of my geometry. I'm going to turn instancing on. I'm going to put the position into my translate, like so. I'm also going to change the scale, like so, but with only R. And then in my instancing second tab, I'm going to put my color down here, like so. And yeah, you can change the camera, but make sure to only zoom in and use right click to move it around. If you change the color, or if you change the angle of the viewer at this moment, it's going to turn out really glitchy, just because of how the circles are stacked up on each other. So just be careful of that. Okay, so now that we have that, we can then put a null. And then what I can do then is I'm going to turn on this viewer. I'm going to split it, my pane, into two. I'm going to bring this one, I'm going to bring the second pane on my right to a bit smaller, drop down this arrow key and do top viewer like so. And then in my main, I'm going to just right click on my empty network and then go and turn off backdrop tops like so. So yeah, now if your head is a bit lower, you can go into this point transform and change that yourself a bit more, but I'm pretty happy with this. One thing I don't like is that there's like a stack of circles. Like I kind of just want my head to be a single circle, and that's because our head position is all at the bottom and it's in the same position. But our skeleton scale is all different sizes for our head data. And so the way that we can change this is we can actually just insert a rectangle in between our noise and our skeleton scale. And what we want to do is we want to turn off anti-alias. We also want to turn this size into pixels. Then what we want to do is we want to basically create a mask. And so what we want to do is we want the length of our rectangle to also be 10, but we want the height to be 1, just like so. And so now you'll see I have a white bar going in the middle, but we want our scale of this white bar to be in the same location where our head position is. And so what we want to do is we actually want to just justify the horizontal and the vertical to be left and bottom, just like so. And so now you'll see that our head has kind of collapsed into one circle. And the way that we can change the size is by increasing and decreasing our red amount, like so. And so I'm going to put this to be like 2, like so. Okay, so now that we have that, the next part that we can do is we can essentially put stickers onto all of these locations instead of them being just being like circles. We can make them into like any image. And so what I have is I just have this transparent image, and all you really need is a transparent image in a square ratio. Mine is just this flower. And so what we can do is from there, well, we can just put this onto our instance textures. And in our instance textures, what we just want to do is we just want to put this here, like so. Now you'll see that we still have this like circle that's like kind of overlapped, and like that's kind of really ugly. So the way that we can change that part though is we can turn on the blending like so, and then we can also discard pixels based off of alpha like that. I think I put my alpha threshold to be like 0.3, but I don't think that really matters. But yeah, from there, well, what you can do is, well, play around with the noise, like so. If you want it to be a bit bigger, maybe we can increase the offset a bit, and then increase the colors just a little bit, make the period a bit lower. But yeah. So now that we have all of this working, what we can do is we can grab our original input and like overlay it. And so I want to overlay my flowers over my input and the skeletal data right here. So what I can do is go back to my original MediaPipe and just put a null here. And with this null, I'm gonna select it. And then I can just bring it all the way over here, like so. From there, you'll see that this is too big. So what we can do, we can fit it so it fits well into the same aspect ratio of 1080, 1920. And then what we can do is we can fit outside just like that. And then we can just put an over onto a render like that. There we go. So I think at this point, we're basically done. We have our input that's being overlaid by an output of our skeletal data. We can change this to be anything we'd like as like a sticker. And yeah, we also have this output that we can funnel into any workflow that we want. One thing that I would like to change though is one last thing. It's just to make this a bit more interesting when we put it into StreamDiffusion. And so one way we could do that is by adding another noise. And I'm just going to set this just to noise. I'm going to set the period to be like 4. I'm going to turn up the harmonics just a little bit. And then I'm going to do monochrome off. So, and then I'm going to grab a over from my render and then put that in the second output. Like so. And there we go. And so at this point, I think that it's pretty obvious what you should do if you've ever worked with StreamDiffusion. You would bring out .simulates StreamDiffusion 2D and just use that. You can get it off his Patreon and you can just, install it, watching his tutorials and like pulse it to start the stream. You just have to input this and then you get an output. The only issue with that, I would say, is that it's like a bit laggy and it's a bottleneck for a lot of people without really good GPUs. And so I wanted to explore an alternative today and show you guys a server-hosted StreamDiffusion service that everyone can use. And that means that you can run TouchDesigner at 60 FPS with no lag and still create some StreamDiffusion real-time AI. The service we're going to be using is called Daydream, and it's basically StreamDiffusion 2D, but in your web browser. So you don't actually need to even download TouchDesigner to use it, but it works pretty nicely in your TouchDesigner workflows because it's basically just replacing the massive GPU usages that you need to even run StreamDiffusion 2D. And the way that we can use Daydream is simply by utilizing its camera webcam option. And so we're going to need to create another NDI out so that we can funnel it into the web browser. And so with the second NDI, I'm just going to call this like final output, like so. And then we can set up the same system where we go into our NDI webcam, click on these options, and then in our second video 2, go into final output, like so. Then you can go onto whatever browser you are using, and I'm going to choose Chrome. And let me resize this real quick so you can see me. Okay. And so in your settings, you'll be able to choose your default camera settings. And so usually it should be just like your regular webcam, but when you have NDI installed, you'll be able to have a bunch of options. And you just want to check the one that you are currently using for your NDI out. So as long as you have your output being funneled into your NDI webcam video 2, and your browser's default camera is also NDI webcam video 2, then you can just go into Daydream and go into the camera option, and it will automatically just be chosen like so. And the output will just be here. And yeah, this is basically StreamDiffusion 2D. If you're familiar with the control nets and the denoise, it's pretty similar to .simulate's component. I believe he worked on the real-time server side, so all of the features are basically the same. The only difference is, though, is now you get multi-control nets, so you have even more control over your output, which is pretty neat. And I think one of the really interesting things about multi-control nets is that it turns StreamDiffusion into a tool that you can optimize and really like play around with and experiment, which is good. You're not kind of just like at the will of the AI. There's actual tweaking that you can do to get a better output. And a lot of it comes from trial and error, but I think the best practice to really discover what each of your control nets does is by turning off everything and just seeing what happens. Like, for example, when I turn off all of my control nets and all of my denoise, none of my visuals actually get into my output. But you can experiment and be like, okay, well, if I increase the canny, then I can kind of see an outline of my input. And then maybe if I increase the depth as well, well, there we go. Now it's like seriously considering the flower body that I've created. And so I think canny and depth are really good ones to play around with. HED as well, it just makes things a bit more flatter, I think. Or not flatter, but it just like considers more of the smaller details with like especially the flowers. Color is good for, you know, these backgrounds that are like multi noisy, I guess. And yeah, like play around with it and, you know, experiment and see what happens when you increase the noise a bunch, or like if you increase the noise a whole lot, or like decrease it just a little bit, you know, like there's a balance that you can try out, and depending on what you like, you'll settle on something that like looks good. It doesn't, like the AI doesn't overpower your input, and when you're happy with it, you can come down to here and you can just save your configuration. You can name it and of course you can record your output just by pressing this button up here. It'll save onto your computer like any other file. You just have to name it beforehand. And also there's a second prompt box that you can put into here. We could do like, I don't know, like lotus, flowers, calligraphy. And when you enter both of them in, you get this option to like prompt blend, which is pretty neat. Depending on what you choose, you can get a pretty good medium. And all of this you can change while recording. So all of the changes will come up, and it's pretty neat. There's also these other tools that you can use that I won't get into because it's out of the scope of this project. But definitely explore it and, you know, see what you can create. The last thing that I want to go over is the fact that you can change so much in the TouchDesigner network and it will be reflected. Like you can change the interpolation size, which is pretty cool. You can make it like super tiny. So you only have a few. You can like increase the amplitude of, not this one, of like your scale. You can like increase the size of your head so it's bigger. You could increase, or like you can like move around your head as well. Maybe like here, and then you can do like side to side. But yeah, for the most part, there's anything that you want to change in the TouchDesigner network, it will be reflected here as well. And overall, I just think that this is like, it enriches the production of real-time AI visual art and adds more creation, which is really important. The more experimentation and the more that you're able to create, I think that's better for anyone who's trying to become a creator. Now, of course, this workflow does end up leaving TouchDesigner, which might not be ideal for some StreamDiffusion TD users because they like to use their output afterwards in post-processing. Of course, Daydream does not completely replace StreamDiffusion TD, and there are definitely reasons for why you want to continue to use StreamDiffusion TD. there are lots of tutorials on Immersive HQ and on YouTube in general for you to learn how to use StreamDiffusion if you have the GPU and you want to keep everything in TouchDesigner. An immediate workaround that I can think of is using the screen grab top to grab your scene and bring it back in. But I also know that .simulate is working with Daydream to do a server-side hosted StreamDiffusion 2D. And this version is the same as the one on the website. There's the same amount of control nets that you're allowed to use, and it works exactly the same as the one that you know and love. If you want to learn more, you should definitely follow .simulate's Patreon, his socials. He'll probably be releasing updates on it. But same thing, you can start it, and once you do, you'll get a visual output right here that you can see change in real time. This one is running at 20 FPS, which is pretty awesome. And my FPS is still around the 45 FPS range, which is really nice. To me, whenever I'm working in TouchDesigner, no matter what I'm doing, as long as it's over 30 FPS real time, I'm very happy with it. But yeah.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you like our YouTube content, I highly recommend you check out the Interactive and Immersive HQ Pro. The HQ Pro is the only comprehensive educational resource and community for immersive design, TouchDesigner, and creative tech pros. In the HQ Pro trainings, we cover almost any topic you can think of, and we go way more in depth than we do in our YouTube tutorials. We have a private